Hey, Patrick Delahanty, and I'm here with Doug,
Hey guys,
and,
how's it
and
going?
we're going to talk about we're going to talk about spin-off conventions. Something that's we've noticed over the last 12 years or so is that there'll be a major convention that decides, hey, let's do another one, and then they do a second convention, and most of the time it does not turn out well, or it
I think the better way to put it is they try and do another convention.
yes. Yeah, we've got several examples that we'll talk about, and what we think that they might have done wrong, and what they probably could have done. But I think, in general, a lot of these conventions overestimate their attendance, and they think it's going to be. They know it's not going to be as big as their prime event, but they think, okay, we'll get a large portion, and then that doesn't come. And I think that's putting too much trust in the brand. What do you think?
I think that's exactly it. Is a lot of these conventions, even when they do use the same name, they think that's an automatic given, and not everyone goes just by the name. They do look at other things, which, and all right, this what the attendees should be doing is looking at the location, what's around it, and what the convention is offering them, and that's what the attendees should be doing is kind of looking at the bigger picture, not just a name attachment.
Yeah, yeah. And, so, talking just about anime conventions, because if we went into sci-fi and comic, oh,
Oh,
that,
we'd have a month's worth of podcasts right there.
yeah. I mean, we'd have all the Wizard Worlds. There's Pack. There's all that stuff, and those are a success. But in the
Yeah,
anime convention world, there haven't really been any true successes. And I'm probably going to get flack for that from the staff of some of these conventions, but it's true. And you have to see that it did not meet your expectations. People went, they had fun. In that way, it's a success, but it may have been a financial
yeah,
disaster,
yeah.
PR
I think we
disaster.
should preface. I think we should preface this with both you and I were part of the team that planned Providence Conference, so
Yes,
we do have some experience in there.
yeah,
Um,
and
the, the,
that was definitely a failure, but it's a success in terms that people enjoyed it and wanted another one. Unfortunately, financial.
the quarter of the attendance we expected had the best time of their lives, but it's by no means financially feasible to keep doing it, which is why there's only ever been one Providence Anime Conference.
Yeah. Another example we can talk about is Anime Expo. Back in 2002, they did Anime Expo New York, and as I understood it, it was done in conjunction with Big Apple Anime Fest, another New York convention at the time, and they had them both together, like across the street from each other, in the same weekend. And AX New York was intended to be a trial run to do an Anime Expo in Tokyo to see how doing a remote convention would work for that organization. And so they did AX New York, and it was actually a pretty big success from where I stood as an attendee. We had a lot of fun. There were a ton of people there because I mean it was right in the heart of Times Square. It was at the Marriott Marquis right there. And then they did AX Tokyo, and I didn't go to that one, but they didn't do it again. So that tells me that probably wasn't a financial success. If even if it was, it must have been a logistical nightmare. Just to not want to do it again. There had to have been some factors why they didn't want to do that again.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head right there with the word doing it remotely. A
Yeah,
lot of times, what makes a convention successful is that you have, if not a majority, you have very committed staffers, the ones that are kind of involved and really on the front lines. They are going to be local to the venue you're hosting it at and very close to it. And I think that's something that hurts a lot of these spin-off events that you're seeing is that no one's really there. No one can say, oh, I've got the afternoon free. Let me go talk with the facilities about something that's concerning us, or things like that. If someone kind of high on the totem pole needs to talk to someone else within, the facilities or whatever, they might have to get on a plane or spend an afternoon driving. And that's part of the issue, I think, is that you don't have that immediate response. I mean, email helps, but it's not the same as a face-to-face meeting with a convention organizer. I think that's something that hurts a lot of these conventions.
Right. And another example, and the one we had mentioned earlier, is Providence Anime Conference. That was a spin-off of Anime Boston back in 2008. And there had never been a full convention in Rhode Island, so we thought, well, we're the New England Anime Society. There's no convention there. Let's bring a convention to Rhode Island. So we announced it at Anime Boston 2007, and we had planned everything. And then at Anime Boston 2008, we had a panel to discuss it, and it wasn't even full. And so that was really the first warning sign we had that something was up. We opened pre-registration at that Anime Boston, and it was online immediately after, and we realized we had a problem when people didn't come rushing in to pre-register. And by then, that was in the spring, and so we only had a few months before the convention to try to fix it, and we didn't.
Yeah. The thing I'll say, and it's something also that you see a lot with a lot of these events, is Providence Anime Conference tried to bill itself as something different. We said, okay, we're going to have a 21 plus convention, and we're going to be more academic, more things, and that honestly, it's hard to tell because we can't go talk to everyone that said they weren't coming, but a lot of people were kind of scared off by that. They didn't want something different. They wanted, if they were going to go to the event, they wanted the same experience they were getting at the other anime conventions. And a lot of times when conventions kind of bill this as we're trying something different, people kind of get very nervous because they don't know what to expect.
Right.
An established brand, you say you're going to Anime Boston again, you're going to Otakon again, you're going to Anime Expo again. You've been going for years and years and years, or at least you can look up what the past event is like. You're doing this spin-off convention, and you say, oh, we're from this convention, and we're doing something different. That makes people nervous because they don't know what to expect. It's very hard to kind of get excited when they have no idea what's coming down the pike.
Right. And it seemed to confuse people because they would be like, wait, it's conference and not convention? And we had done that to kind of convey, oh, well, this is going to be, more adult, not adult in the porn way, but adult and grown-up conversations. It wasn't 21 plus because it was a drinking fest. It was 21 plus because we didn't want people running around playing Duck, Duck, Goose. We wanted to, be with older fans. And in that way, it was a success. We had a lot of fun, and there weren't kids running around playing Duck, Duck, Goose. It was the more mature audience that we were going for, but I think that the name choice even confused a lot of people. And just trying to explain that there was really no elevator pitch we had that said,
yep,
this is what we're trying to do. And
yeah,
I think people that went there, they realized it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they probably would have told people to come back for the next year, but since it was a financial disaster.
Yeah. I mean, I still say one of my favorite convention memories was, I was partially in charge of registration, and I was sitting there, I think early Saturday afternoon or middle of the day, and looking around in the lobby of the floor we had of the Providence Convention Center, and it's not seeing anyone around in the hall. Like, oh crap! Even a few people we did manage to get got sick of us and left. And I was like, well, that's their choice. And then I walked around, and it wasn't that everyone left; it was that everyone was sitting in the panel rooms. So we did, like we said, we did succeed there, but
Yeah,
a lot of people kind of ask that question of what makes a convention successful. And yes, attendees having time is part of that. But at the same time, you still got to pay bills and everything like that. And being able to make a convention where it's both attendees having a really great time and want to come back and paying your bills, it's hard. It is
yeah,
very hard to do.
yeah. And yeah, I definitely remember wondering where all the attendees were. They were in the programming, and so that was we knew the audience we wanted, and we made programming for that, and they enjoyed that. It's just we weren't able to convey that to other people who could have come and enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But another convention is Oni-Con Hawaii. It's a Houston, Texas convention that decided to go to Honolulu, and neither of us were there, but that was held once.
Yeah.
And there's Japan Expo, which is they run conventions in France and I believe Belgium, and they decided to do one in San Jose area in California, and they booked this giant convention center. I have a con report on. I have a con report on Japan Expo USA a couple of years ago on the podcast, and you can see the empty halls. They have the convention center they booked was way too big. They didn't get nearly enough people. They seemed to assume that all of the people that knew about them in Europe would know about them here, but nobody knows Japan
Yeah.
here.
That's
And
and
I think this is a good example of a convention going to an area that they're not in, and they nobody knows the name, so the branding doesn't matter. To everybody out here, it's just, oh, it's another convention. And not that many people had heard of them. So they got, I don't know, a couple thousand people probably. And the people at the convention, though, it was weird because they seemed to do the same things they did in Europe, which aren't that's not the way that conventions out here run. And
yeah.
conventions in the US run totally different than the way Europe does it. And so it just didn't translate. I've even noticed East Coast and West Coast differences. And so that kind of speaks to the conventions that have gone from either California to New York or Baltimore to Vegas,
Yeah.
which I guess brings us to our next example.
Yeah, and I mean, Otakon Vegas was such a mixed bag because I think this is kind of the exception to the rule almost. And it still didn't succeed, but it had that Otakon name, and so many people were like, oh, I go to Otakon, I have a blast at Otakon, I'll check out Otakon Vegas. But I think the issue they ran into was, once again, they kind of, or when they had it, because it was right after New Year's, right after the holidays, people didn't have spending money, and part of that was because they don't want to overstrain their staff, because a lot of these spin-off conventions, especially with fan events, are sharing their staff. So you can't pull people away from one con to focus on the other and not have the other one of them suffer because they don't have the attention level they need to focus on it. And I think a lot of people, myself included, said, okay, I'm going to go to Otakon Vegas because, yeah, I like Otakon, but it's also an excuse to go to check out Las Vegas. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a good time at Otakon Vegas overall, but I'm not going to go out of my way again. And a lot of the highlights of that trip for me were seeing Las Vegas, not seeing Otakon.
And I think that's you are the perfect audience for Otakon Vegas. They are probably exactly what they wanted, was people that know Otakon, have a good time at Otakon, and want to check out Vegas. So, hey, here's the perfect excuse.
And I think also with Otakon Vegas, I can't think of anybody that I know in the circles that I move in that went to the first Otakon Vegas, that went to the second, that weren't people staffing it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a big flag right there.
And I suspect that Oni-Con had the same sort of thought, like, hey, who doesn't want to go to Hawaii? Let's do Oni-Con in Hawaii. we'll get all the Houston fans that get to take a vacation to Hawaii. But the
Yeah.
anime fans are notoriously cheap. They're young. They don't have a lot of money. They don't want to spend money, so they go to conventions near them. And so when you can't really get those people to get up and go to a convention that's in a,
Yeah.
on the other side of the
The,
country, let alone an
oh,
hour away.
yeah. Confession. The only reason I was able to do Otakon Vegas was because I booked my hotel outside of their hotel block, and I bundled with my flights and my hotel together. And my girlfriend and I, we saved a lot of money because we kind of booked a travel package that happened to be at the right hotel. You know, oh look, this package happens to be at the Planet Hollywood Hotel, and we were getting airfare and everything together. But we also saved a lot of money because we did that, and that's not always an option.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's neat to do that, and it's kind of why I go back to saying that I think if Otakon Vegas was to be a successful thing, it would be something that they couldn't do on a regular basis. It would be something to do every couple of years, generate hype, have more time to really build it up, and keep drumming it into them. And it also gives them a chance to save and kind of give them something to look forward to, versus trying to get that same group of people year after year after. I think
Well,
that's the other issue too, is
well,
adding another one to the event. Even if they like the brand, people really have to kind of look at their budget.
I remember when Otakon Vegas was first announced, I was thinking, why Vegas? They're going to a place that already has conventions. Now, granted, they were moderately successful at best. They're not hugely successful large conventions that attract tens of thousands of people every year for 10 or 20 years. I mean, the ones they did have tend to pop up and stick around a couple of years, or they move around. But there are conventions there. It's not like there was this big gaping hole in Las Vegas that they're like, oh, they need a convention and we'll put it. So when they picked the location, it seemed to me like somebody just wanted to take a vacation to Las Vegas, and this is the way for them to do it. There are other areas of the country that do not. You can go to some states still, and there's not a convention in that state. There's nothing in Wyoming or Delaware. Now, granted, Otakon, Wyoming, probably not a great investment, but there are places that don't have conventions that you could probably set one up. And it seemed weird that they picked a location that has some and is not too far away from an area that has a ton of. It's not that far from LA. So I don't know. It seemed like a weird choice.
Yeah, and once again, I go back to it's the destination, not the event,
Yeah.
and that's sometimes hard to pick. I mean, some conventions do thrive on that. I mean, to use a weird example, even New York Comic Con, more people. I know plenty of people that go to that event partially so they can sneak in a trip to New York. But at the same time, they had New York Anime Fest, and that just wasn't getting the numbers they expected, so they folded it back into kind of a programming track back into New York Comic Con, and eventually it just kind of got absorbed entirely.
Yeah.
So it's even when you're a for-profit company, spin-off cons are difficult.
And now Reed Expo isn't really spinning off conventions. They're buying them. They just bought Emerald City Comic Con. And so that's going to be run by them. So they didn't say, oh, we're going to do another con in Seattle. They found a con in Seattle that was doing well and bought them. And but in terms of spin-off cons for other genres, one that just happened, it's in the news, so we could bring it up, is Boston TARDIS. They're a spin-off of Chicago TARDIS, which is a established Chicago convention for Doctor Who, and they get a few thousand people every year. And they announced that they're going to do one in Boston and one in Phoenix. They announced the dates for the Boston convention, and it happened to be the same weekend as Anime Boston. And a few people brought that up on their Facebook page saying, hey, did you guys know that there's this other convention happening in town at the same time? And they deleted their response because I went to look just recently, but I believe they claimed to be aware of it, but I don't think they realized what a big draw it was. And
yeah, and that's another one of those things that we talked about Japan Expo, and we talked about this, is a lot of these conventions do the spin-off event, but don't really look at the bigger picture of what else is going on in the market in wherever they're relocating to.
yeah,
I mean, Oni-Con's trying to do one in Hawaii, and Hawaii's not exactly a big state, and it already has a very established convention, Kauai-Con.
and there's another convention going into Otakon. I just added it to my site. Give me a second to look it up. But back to Boston TARDIS, the Boston Doctor Who group was already planning to go to Anime Boston. So if they had talked to a local Doctor Who group, they could have found out, oh, there's this other thing. We want this large fan base to go to our event. Let's not do it that same weekend. But they didn't research that. And if it would have, how long would that have taken to reach out to Doctor Who fan group and say, hey, you guys okay with this? And they ended up, as a result, not getting a lot of pre-registrations, which I'm sure was depressing to them. And then they had one of their major guests cancel, which...
And that's just kind of the nail on the coffin right there.
Yeah, and it was how many days before the event? Just like a few. So I feel bad for anybody that had booked a convention or a trip to that convention where they, suddenly it's gone. They canceled it. Now, the other Hawaii convention I was thinking of, Anime Ohana, which is in October in Honolulu. So there's two Hawaii-based conventions originating in Hawaii. There was Otakon Hawaii that went in there a few years ago, but it hasn't come back. There's some sci-fi cons in Hawaii. And there's also Anime Matsuri Hawaii, which has just been announced. So you may remember Oni-Con Hawaii went from Houston to Honolulu, but Anime Matsuri Hawaii is going from Houston to Honolulu in the same venue that Oni-Con was.
I'm talking right now, so Google Voice will just pick up the fact that I'm face palming at this.
It's the same Hawaii Convention Center. Now, I don't. Granted, Anime Matsuri is a larger convention, but I don't know what they're thinking, because this has been tried before, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
They think that I don't know if they think they can just pick up their Houston convention and move it, or if they think all the attendees are going to just flock. But I can't see this working, and I don't know why they would decide to do this, because it's been tried before and it didn't work. And they think, oh well, we're going to do it different. That's why cons that start up, the spite conventions that start up, where somebody's like, I don't like this convention. I'm going to start my own. I'm going to do it different. Those never turn out well. And so this.
Yeah. And I mean, I think any convention you look at, even the huge ones like Anime Expo, Otakon, Anime Boston, ASEN, any of these you look at, the central part of their base are local-ish, or within a certain radius. The people traveling it to them are a much smaller. It's a smaller percent. The majority of them will be people that are nearby. I mean, I hate to sound like we're tooting our own horn, but part of the reason why Anime Boston is successful is look at all the colleges in the greater Boston area. So you have you have a very good basis for a lot of young people that are able to go to this convention because at the end of the day, they can just take the subway home.
Yeah. Although, I mean, that doesn't mean you can just put a convention in Boston and have a big success. Wizard
Oh,
World
absolutely not.
is a perfect example. Or because they went to Boston once, never went back because they know the fan base. Another example is the people that do Fan Expo in Toronto. They did Great American Anime Expo in Boston, and it was a miserable failure.
And I mean, like I said, they're operating under the assumption that only your brand name can carry you is so dangerous. And I mean, attendees may be very cheap at times and watch their budget, but I would also say that attendees aren't stupid. When you see a convention saying we're going to have a spin-off convention in XYZ city and it's a vacation destination, it's Las Vegas, it's Hawaii, it's Orlando, Florida, people are going to start asking questions because even if that's not your intent, it sounds like you just want to do this as an excuse for a vacation. And yes, that's the appeal. That's the appeal for possible attendees, but it's not necessarily going to. It doesn't make you look that good. It makes people question your motives.
And it as an attendee, if I hear a convention I'm attending is going to split off and run another one somewhere else, it sounds to me like there's going to be a division of resources where the one I've usually been attending might not be as good because now money and or staff have been spending time doing this other thing, and because it's new it needs even more attention, so maybe this old thing that I enjoyed is not going to be as great. And I mean, yeah, spin-off conventions in the anime world just do not have a good track record.
Yeah, I mean, I will mention, and you mentioned Wizard World, and yeah, in Boston it didn't succeed. And we also talked about Reed buying out Emerald City Comic Con and things like that. And see, I think that's a very different thing from spin-off because these are, commercially run things. These are people that are doing it as their full-time job versus fan-run conventions. And on one hand, they do succeed, but on the other hand, they turn into very cookie-cutter events.
Yes.
It's the same, you go to it in one city, it's pretty much the same thing in the other city as that. So
and
you are going to kind of get different people. You're going to get the different people because not a lot of people are going to each different one.
And I suspect many of our viewers are familiar with Wizard World, or at least their reputation, and how their conventions are not very personable. How it's just show up, get an autograph at a table, and then they take your money and laugh as you walk away.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're all one big fan family. It's all right. Give us your money, get your autograph, get out. And
that's exactly it. It's you kind of lose that kind of connection with. Not to say that a for-profit con can't be good, but you do kind of lose that personal connection of you're working. You're connecting with the staff who are also fellow fans versus you're connecting with a company that's at the end of the day kind of looking at how much money is this going to make us. And that sounds very negative, but unfortunately that's kind of the case.
So where do we stand on these?
I would say both to the conventions that are thinking of spinning off and
don't.
But if you insist, and the advice to the attendees as well is what you should always be doing for any convention, which is do your homework, research, and look at the bigger picture and really see if it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, research would have saved Chicago TARDIS for sure. if they had realized, oh, we're on the same weekend as this other large convention, we probably shouldn't do that. If we'll see how Anime Matsuri Hawaii turns out, but seeing it that it's at the same venue that's been tried before by another Houston convention, that's not a good sign. And
hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah, and
definitely prepare for the worst.
Whatever you think your attendance is going to be, take a quarter of that, and because it's everybody seems to always overestimate. I'm even guilty of that. So, yeah, I guess if you're going to start at a spin-off convention, think twice, do your research, and think a third time, and then don't do it.
Put that energy into making your primary convention better.
Yes, absolutely, because who doesn't want that? All right, and so next week we've got a AnimeCons TV rerun episode, so I hope everybody enjoys that. And then the following week we'll be back with feedback. So if you've got comments on this episode, and you probably do, hi Otakon Vegas, please write us at podcast at animecons.tv or call our voicemail line at 762-ADEQUATE at 762-233-7828. It's right down here. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.
We'll see you guys next time.